Now then,
Namo Om Vishnu Padhaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachalini Nivasisha Srivari Pashtatala Satanine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Yeah, just reminded that it's a fact actually that attending these classes or these discussions on Bhagavad Gita, that's wasn't the temple said that can account for Bhakti Sastri, that you do this study together. Yeah, at least from the temple's perspective, as far as an initiations. Anyway, all right, so let's 226. So the subject is still about the soul, Atma Tattva, isn't it? And if I remember rightly, now Krishna's he has given logic, or he's given logic based on scripture. And as far as I remember, in text 26, he's speaking from the worldly perspective. Yeah. Here. So, let's dive into it. Let's have someone to read. Is that Mother Mongol? You're putting your hand up there. Is that to read?
Yes.
Go
If
ahead.
possible.
Yes, it's
So
possible.
should I read in Sanskrit or just in translation and
You
purport?
can, for the Bhagavad Gita, we're also reading the Sanskrit.
Okay. Atha chainam nitya jatam nityam va manasye mritam tathapi tvam mahabaho nainam sochitam arhasi. If, however, you think that the soul or the system of life is always born and dies forever, you still have no reason to lament. O mighty armed, purport, there is always a class of philosophers, almost akin to the Buddhists, who do not believe in the separate existence of the soul beyond the body. When Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, it appeared that such philosophers existed, and they were known as the Lokayatikas and Vaibhashikas. Such philosophers maintain that life symptoms take place at a certain mature condition of material combination. The modern material science and materialist philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage of life, symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. The science of the anthropology is based on this philosophy. Currently, many pseudo religions, now becoming fashionable in America, are also adhering to this philosophy, as well as the nihilistic, non devotional Buddhist sects. Even if Arjuna did not believe in the existence of the soul, as the Vaibhashika philosophy, there would still have been no cause for the lamentation. No one laments the loss of certain bulk of chemicals and stops discharging his prescribed duty. On the other hand, in the modern science and scientific warfare, so many tons of chemicals are wasted from achieving victory over the enemy. According to the Vaibhashika philosophy, the so-called soul or Atma vanish along with the deterioration of the body. So, in any case, whatever Arjuna accepted, the Vedic conclusion that there is the atomic soul, or he did not believe in the existence of the soul, he may not respond. He had no reason to lament. According to this theory, since there are so many living entities generating out of the matter every moment, and so many of them are being vanquished every moment, there is no need to grieve for such incidents. If there were no rebirth for the soul, Arjuna had no reason to be afraid of being affected by sinful reaction due to his killing his grandfather and teacher. But at the same time, Krishna sarcastically addressed Arjuna as Mahabahu, mighty armed, because he, at least, did not accept the story of the Vaibhashikas, which leaves aside the Vedic wisdom. As a Kshatriya, Arjuna belonged to the Vedic culture, and it behooved him to continue to follow his principles.
Okay, thank you. Everyone get the idea of what Krishna is saying here? He's kind of checkmating Arjuna, even from the non-Vedic perspective, or from the materialistic perspective, in understanding the body to be nothing but chemicals. Then where is the loss, or why the hesitation to for instance, why the hesitation to do away with just some chemicals? You understand? If anyone is Madhu Mangopo, are you speaking? Because I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you.
No, I was thinking loudly somehow.
Okay, no problem. Hare Krishna. Yeah, so that's what is explaining here. And these philosophies, I read this before, obviously, but these are obviously some type of Buddhists here, the Loyatika, and or at least the Vaibhashikas. That is more in the line of Vedic philosophy, where they analyze the universe in terms of Sankhya as atoms. But it would be the atheistic aspect of that, where everything is just atoms. So anyway, as Prabhupada said, no one laments the loss. What did he say? No one laments the loss of a certain bulk of chemicals and stops discharging their duties. So according to even the atheistic philosophy or the nihilistic philosophy, everyone knows what nihilistic means. Some people nodding their head.
No, Prabhuji, no.
Nietzsche, Prabhu philosopher Nietzsche.
Huh?
Nietzsche, German philosophy, he was nihilist.
Nietzsche.
Philosophy.
Yeah.
It's denial, pessimism, depression, philosophy.
What? Say again. I missed the word.
Philosophy of depression, of nihilism,
Yeah,
denial.
that's one way of explaining it, the philosophy of depression. Basically, it means
there's no soul, like they don't believe that individual soul exists.
Yeah, they don't believe in anything. That's why it's a good saying, the philosophy of depression. Everything is useless. Everything is pointless. Life is pointless. There's no pointless in the religion is pointless. Everything is pointless. This world is just pointless, and there's nothing to it.
Yeah, most German philosophers were nihilists, and all their philosophies about that.
Yeah, about depression. It's a good way of describing it. The philosophy of depression. So they say life has no intrinsic value, or no pursuit worthy of pursuing. We're just we just a bag of chemical, and you could add to the point, just a bag of chemicals, and so that's why it says the nihilistic, non-devotional Buddhist sect. So interesting. So that's their conclusion, that there is no soul. Yeah, so that's what's basically being said here. Any questions or comments on this? That why is Arjuna getting all sentimental over a bag of chemicals? What's the point? He's becoming all worried about doing away with some chemicals, according to the atheistic theory. So that's why he said here, if, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life was always born and that dies forever. So Krishna's referring to different philosophers here, atheists and Buddhists. So he's referring to their theories. Yeah. All right. Unless there's any questions on this or comments, anything's not clear, we can read the next verse. There's a few hands up. So Anupama, you can read text 27 for us.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Text 27. One who, sorry, Jayastu hi dhruva mrityu dhruvam janma mritasya cha tadmad apajaya diti na tvayam sochitam arhashi. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. One has to take birth according to one's activities of life, and after finishing one term of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, one is going through one cycle of birth and death after another without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. But at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. The battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of a Kshatriya. Why should be afraid of or aggrieved at the time of his death of his relatives, since he was discharging his proper duty? He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of sinful acts of which he was so afraid. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives, and he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action.
Okay. So more kind of in a similar vein that Krishna's speaking here, kind of coming from the point of worldly logic. In other words, if Arjuna thinks he's going to save grandfather Bhishma or Dronacharya or others from death by not fighting, by not instigating the war, then he is mistaken. Because as Prabhupada says in this, as Krishna is saying, as soon as one who has taken his birth, that's it. They're going to die. and they take birth again. So, but Prabhupada in the purport, having understood that, it doesn't give one right to mindlessly or needlessly kill. Yeah. So, yeah. Any questions or any clarifications here? Yeah, the cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. Yeah, but at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. I was asked a question in that regard as well. Someone was questioning, I think I mentioned it, someone was questioning the Battle of Kurukshetra and why it took place and why is such a conversation taking place where at a time when hundreds of people were killed. So in other words, he was speaking, why is there war? So war is inevitable. It's an inevitable factor. We'll clamor for peace, but the only peace we're going to find is a peace within our own hearts and minds. That's the only peace we're going to find. There will be no long-lasting peace in this material world. There's always upheavals of one type or another, which definitely takes the extreme form of war. I guess we're all seeing in the news, isn't it? We all see the graphic pictures in Ukraine, etc., and other places. It's part of the material world. Yeah. All right. Let me just go into Surrender Unto Me, this book we're also getting some commentaries from by Bodhijan. Yeah, and he says, as I just said here, Arjuna is wrong if he thinks that he will stop the Kaurava's deaths by not fighting. When the eternal soul contacts a temporary material body, birth takes place. When the eternal soul loses contact with that body, death results. The point is again explained in the next verse. Okay. All right, so we'll read the next one. So, Sejal, Mother, you'd like to read text 28?
Hare Krishna, yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Just bear with me 1 second, sorry. Text 28, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're having to go into Sanskrit. I'm sure you'll do well.
I'll try, yeah. Anyaktadani bhutani vyakta madhyani bharata anvyakta nidhanami eva tatra ka paridevana. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when they are annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? Purport. Accepting that there are two classes of philosophers, one believing in the existence of the soul and the other not believing in the existence of the soul. There is no cause for lamentation in either case. Non-believers in the existence of the soul are called atheists by followers of Vedic wisdom. Yet, even if, for argument's sake, we accept the atheistic theory, there is still no cause for lamentation. Apart from the separate existence of the soul, the material elements remain unmanifested before the creation. From this subtle state of unmanifestation comes manifestation. Just as from ether, air is generated, from air, fire is generated, from fire, water is generated, and from water, earth becomes manifested. From earth, many varieties of manifestations take place. Take, for example, a big skyscraper manifested from the earth. When it is dismantled, the manifestation becomes again unmanifested and remains as atoms in the ultimate stage. The law of conservation of energy remains, but in course of time, things are manifested and unmanifested. That is the difference. Then what cause is there for lamentation, either in the stage of manifestation or unmanifestation? Somehow or other, even in the unmanifested stage, things are not lost, both at the beginning and at the end, and all elements remain unmanifested, and only in the middle are they manifested, and this does not make any real material difference. And if we accept the Vedic conclusion as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Atvanta ime deha, that these material bodies are perishable in due course of time, nityasyokta srirana, but that soul is eternal, then we must remember always that the body is like a dress. Therefore, why lament the changing of a dress? The material body has no factual existence in the relation to the eternal soul. It is something like a dream. In a dream, we may think of flying in the sky or sitting on a chariot as a king. But when we wake up, we can see that we are neither in the sky nor seated on the chariot. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of the non-existence of the material body. Therefore, in either case, whether one believes in the existence of the soul or one does not believe in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation for loss of the body. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Any questions here or clarifications? Okay, it's kind of clear, similar instructions. Krishna is, I'm just reflecting how Krishna is really bringing Arjuna above his sentimental illusion. Yeah. To have no, in one sense, Arjuna is, of course, he's a person and he's devotee, so he has quite strong emotions, especially in regards to Krishna, and he has relationships with grandfather Bhishma and others as well. But now he's hearing from Krishna actually the real absolute vision, yeah, which is this science of the soul. Yeah, and this gives a sense of this will give a sense of Arjuna, where he's going to go into this battle now with absolutely no regrets, as they say. He's going to, at the end, as we hear in the end of Bhagavad Gita, he's actually ready, and he's very intent upon fighting and doing what's necessary. Yeah. So anyway, he's definitely by hearing this, I mean, already as a Kshatriya, he is free of fear, but now he's free of definitely even more so after hearing this from Krishna. He's free of fear, and he will be free of hesitation. Yeah. So Kshatriyas, they're quite spirited like that. The real Kshatriya has no, well, most times they have no fear, although sometimes you see, sometimes in the battle, when they're facing a ferocious foe, then they become fearful sometimes, and they flee for their lives. Yeah, so that's a great discredit to a Kshatriya. Anyway, so yeah, it's almost like, you could say it's almost like a Buddhist type of philosophy, isn't it? All created beings are manifest in the beginning, manifest in interim state, and then they're annihilated. So why do you lament for people dying? What's the point of lamenting for the death? For death, you know? But it's only natural to lament when a friend or a loved one passes. But at least we're able to balance it out with this knowledge that Krishna is giving, and we can come to terms with it. Yeah, let me just look under surrender unto me. Anything here? Krishna has just said that Arjuna should fight whether he believes in an eternal soul possessing a material body, or that no soul, only the body exists. So what's the argument against that he gave, that only the body exists?
It's the previous verse. Jatasya
Yeah.
hidho mrityur.
Yeah, it's
So
just a bunch of chemicals.
It's like you manifest and then non-manifest. And the previous verse says, if you are born, then you have to die. And if you die, then you have to be born again. So it's is it just telling us the cycle of?
Yeah, it's just, yeah. And so whether you believe in the soul, believe that the soul possesses a body, or you believe there's no soul and only the body exists, still, this verse explains that whether or not we believe in a soul, the material body was previously unmanifested. Now for some time the body is manifest, and in the future it will again become unmanifested. The body must be annihilated. What is the use, therefore, of lamentation? Arjuna should fight regardless of the knowledge of the soul, regardless of what knowledge of the soul he accepts as true. So that's why I said he was kind of checkmate by Krishna. Even if he started to bring up atheistic type of arguments, then Krishna was already there and checked him. Yeah.
It's all about attachment, isn't it?
Yeah, attachment due to ignorance.
Yeah, attachment to, yes. You know the flesh, you know the body, you know the soul, and you're changing your bodies, but because you attach to these persons, that's where the emotions come out.
Yeah, and sometimes you hear sometimes described that sometimes we lament not for the person, but for the friend we once had and that we won't have anymore. Or the companionship.
Our own
what kind of we lament for.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something else on my mind and I forget now. Yeah. So yeah, it's just so to one degree, we can say that even though we're Hare Krishnas and we accept the existing science of the soul and we accept the existence of the soul, still to one degree or another, we probably are dealing with the bodily concept of life. And so therefore, to one degree or another, we will be bewildered by death or disease or reverses in life, or the different dualities in life, then we get quite bewildered. I'm just reading this section in the one of my favorite sections of the Mahabharata, the Shanti Parva, where Yudhisthira adamantly refuses to take up the throne and he's going to fast until death rather than take up leading the kingdom. And then Vyasadeva then begins to try and speak sense into him, because it's at the point where Yudhisthira has decided to fast until death. You know, so you can imagine they're all kind of thinking, oh God. Oh, perhaps not that exactly. So then and I'll find it now. I'll just read a section of it. I'm trying to put it into modern day English, this part, and send it out as a kind of for devotees to read. So do you want to hear this? It's okay if I read it? Okay, if you're nodding heads there, it's very good. So the question, Vyasadeva refers back to a conversation by Janak, I think it's Janak Maharaj, he has with a Brahmana of the name of Ashma. And he asks Yudhisthira to please hear this conversation. So the question that Janak asks is how, if someone who acts for their own well-being, how should they act, or how should they understand the different dualities in this world, both good and evil? How are we supposed to understand it all? So his answer is, it might take 4 or 5 minutes if that's okay. It's okay, I can stop and make sure we understand what's being said. So Ashma said, immediately after the formation of a body, of a man's body, joys and griefs attach themselves to it. Right? As soon as you're born, you know, as soon as, you know, you go to hospital, or, you know, you go to hospital, you see it. Yeah, the place where I stay in my ashram, the ashram where I stay, I happen to be staying next door to a maternity hospital, part of the wing. So there's all pregnant ladies going in and ladies coming out with babies. And all family, they're getting into the car and all kind of gushy-washy, a new baby. Anyway, like that. So that baby already has griefs and joys attached to it, labeled. Nothing's going to change. It's going to come. Griefs and joys. It gets part of the label that gets slapped on the body for karma. Although there is a possibility of either of the two overtaking the person, that means grief or joy, whatever actually does overtake one, it quickly robs him of their good sense. So if someone comes into wealth, they become intoxicated. If someone meets grief, they become, if they meet reverses, you know, they become distressed. So he says, it quickly robs him of his reason, like the wind driving away, gathering clouds. So in times when someone's prosperous, one thinks, I am a high birth. I can do whatever I like. I am not an ordinary man. So they become intoxicated with their wealth. His mind becomes soaked with this triple vanity. Yeah, they become soaked with vanity. Okay, they got wealth, and they think they are not ordinary. Yeah, and so they're addicted to all types of enjoyments, and they begin to waste their wealth on useless things. Even if their wealth is accumulated from their ancestors, they actually waste it. And often they become, at some point, then their fortunes change and they lose everything. This is the nature of this world. Yeah. And then he begins to find ways and means to take the legitimate property of others. So one's gone from being rich to being impoverished, and even to the extent of planning and stealing. Anyway, I won't read it all. It's quite detailed. I'll just give you a synopsis of it. Then it says, like a hunter piercing a deer with his arrows, that person gets punished who robs ones of other possessions. So anyway, I'll just go forward a bit on it. Okay. So carefully observing the behavior of all creatures, a king should, by his exercise of his intelligence, apply remedies for alleviating the great sorrows of his subjects. The causes of all mental sorrow are two. Okay, we ready for this? All mental sorrow are two. One, the delusion of the mind, and the accession or taking on distress. No third cause exists. All these diverse kinds of anxiety are also those arising from attachment, as Mother Chandravali said, to earthly enjoyments that overtake man, as are even such decrepitude and death. Sometimes it's quite graphic the way it's described here. That's why I kind of like it. It's kind of, in one sense, it says here, decrepitude and death, like a pair of wolves, devour all creatures, strong or weak, short or tall. No man can escape decrepitude and death, not even the subjugator of the whole earth, not even one who rules the earth. Be it happiness or be it sorrow that comes upon creatures, it should be enjoyed or borne without elation or depression. So that's in Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? One should be steady in both happiness and distress. There is no method to escape from them. So again, as a baby is born, we've already listed all the reverses. The evils of life, O king, overtake one in early, middle, or old age. They can never be avoided. While those, the absence of what is agreeable, the presence of what is disagreeable, good and evil, bliss and stress, follow destiny. Similarly, the birth of creatures and their death and the accessions of gain, it means they come into the world, and loss are all preordained. Even as scent, color, taste, and touch spring naturally, happiness and misery arise from what has been preordained. Seats and beds and vehicles, prosperity and drink and food, even approach, leaving creatures according to time's course. Physicians get ill, the strong become weak. They that are in the enjoyment of prosperity lose all and become indigent. The course of time is very wonderful. High birth, health, beauty, prosperity, and objects of enjoyment are all one through destiny. The indigent, let me just translate that word, 1 second, that word, or that means a needy person. The needy person, although they may not desire it, have many children. The affluent, again, are seen to be childless, right? So someone's very rich, but they cannot give birth to children. Someone who's very poor has many children. Wonderful is the course of destiny. The evils caused by disease, fire, water, weapons, hunger, poison, fever, and death, and falls from high places, overtake a man according to the destiny under which he is born. It is seen in this world that somebody without sinning suffers diverse ills, while another, having sinned, is not borne down by the weight of calamity, but they will in the next life. It is seen that somebody in the enjoyment of wealth perishes in youth, while someone that is poor drags on his existence, so lives to a ripe old age, but they're poor. Someone who's rich dies very young. Yeah. One born in a low rate or low family may have a very long life, while one that comes from a noble line perishes soon like an insect. In this world, it is very common that persons in affluent circumstances have no appetite. You know, they're very rich, but they have something wrong with their stomach. While they that are in want can digest chips of wood. You got that one? So someone's very poor, but they can digest anything. Someone's very rich, but they have severe health problems and they can't digest anything. Just coming to the end here. Impelled by destiny, whatever sins the man or wicked soul, discontented with his conditions, commits, saying, I am the doer, he regards to be all for his good. Hunting, dice, women, wine, brawls, these are censured by the wise. And he goes on like that. Anyway, so that's from Ashman, the Brahmin called Ashman, about the dualities of this world. Some interesting things there. Was that okay? Was that of some interest? Few nodding heads. Okay.
So how is it connected to this verse we are talking
That's a
about?
good point. I was just keen to share it. No, it's the dualities of the world that we're faced with. Like Arjuna is faced with dualities here, fighting or not fighting. You know, he has his duty to perform regardless of the, he has a duty to do, regardless whether it's going to bring happiness or distress. Happiness or distress is just, it's just part of life and it cannot be avoided. But still, over and above everything, we should do our duty. And Arjuna has a specific duty here. All right, quick, let's continue reading. Anybody else on that? And any comments on that?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, yes, Nitai Mata.
I was thinking to understand further. So basically, attachment will even stop us doing our duties.
Well, especially if we have duty, or if we have attachment to not doing our duty, or if we have for Arjuna, if he is attached to his own conclusions that he has arrived at, if he's attached to the concepts that are the results of his ignorance, Yeah,
I was just thinking sometimes in some devotees' life, and we because of attachments, we don't know what to do with the family members. So especially if they are not Krishna conscious, so you don't know how to handle them because they are not favorable. So can we take this also here?
we can do, in a sense that let's try and look at it from the perspective of just like that quote we gave in the beginning. As soon as someone is born, there is different miseries, and there's different good and bad is attached to the body.
Yeah.
So if we're in a situation, and for instance, where we're associating with like a family member is not very favorable to Krishna consciousness, it doesn't necessarily, perhaps it's rather than try and adjust or give that situation up. Of course, if one is being abused intensely and the situation is very dangerous, then you should act to give that up. But rather than give up that situation, a higher religious principle is to be tolerant in that situation. Yeah. That is the highest principle. To not try and artificially try and you could say to artificially try and negate what is our karma, because it will come back to us through another window. You understand that? We may be in we may be in a situation, in an unfavorable situation, or maybe a difficult situation, and say, okay, I know I want to give this situation up. I want to give this up, or like give that up. But it's written on their forehead. So you may try and get, throw the rubbish out one window, but then you're going to turn around and it's going to come through another window, so to speak. So better is to learn to be tolerant. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that due to attachment, you're going to feel the pain and pleasures of things, right? But if you, like you said, be tolerant, then you'll see how Krishna, in due course of time, Krishna changes the situations. And you see, well, that happened because of this, and now look at it, you see it in different contexts.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah, thank you, Robert. So that's what, so things will change. Even if things change, even things may not change. Yeah, we still learn to be tolerant. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure I mean, I don't want to give too personal examples, but I know when I was looking after my father, this was before he was given notice of, before he was given notice of the last few months to live. It was really difficult for me to actually, because I had to go and see him like 3 or 4 times or 3 times a week. And I had my service and I come and he always had the television on, so I used to go there and he didn't have a spiritual bone in his body, He was sometimes quite abusive, Not at the end, but I had to tolerate it,
Mm.
And I could never see the end of it. I thought, there'd be no end of this. I mean, how? Not that I wanted him done away with. No, I didn't. I didn't want that. I just was a bit, okay, what can I do? This is, he's my father. It's my karma. I can't neglect him. I have to take care of him.
Mm.
And but I had to tolerate. I had to tolerate going to see him, and he used to smoke like anything. His place stunk of nicotine, and it was his flat was below the mode of ignorance. If there's a mode below the ignorance, I used to conclude that. So it's very. But then I just did my duty. I just did my duty. What I had to do, make sure he's all right. I had to buy his medicines for him, things like that. I had to phone him up every day to make sure he hadn't popped off, Yeah, I had to do it every day because someone in a couple of flats away, they actually died. And no one knew until the smell started coming. So from that point on, I used to contact. So anyway, not speaking about myself too much, but you've all got your own situations that you're dealing with. I'm sure you have own situations where it's difficult and it's not easy. But it's better just to, stay where we are and continue and see it and continue doing our duty. Yeah. As soon as you start to try and adjust it, that's when you're walking on thin ice. You're actually walking into no man's land at that point. You're kind of like a ship without a rudder, Yeah.
What's that word? You said this material world is
Sukhalitaima Shashvatam, temporary and full of misery. Yeah.
So no, everybody's got one thing or something that they were suffering. We, like you said, we try to shift it, make it look out that I am really better off. I'm good, but we're not. None of us are in this material. None of us have got a proper situation. If not now, everything might be roses now, and then things will change in time.
Yeah, and then things will get really nice, and then at some point down along the line, things will go really bad.
That's again that
the other side.
What was that slok? Happiness and distress come as summer and winter seasons.
Yeah, But the idea is there has to be something else going on while we're in this ocean of dualities. And that something else is Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always steady, and the development of Krishna consciousness is not dependent on what we have or what we don't have. The soul is transcendental and Krishna is transcendental. So regardless of the ways of happiness and distress, difficult situations or not, we have something else that we're developing, and that's our loving affection for Krishna.
That's why sometimes we say there is nothing called good or bad. It's how you look at the situation.
Yeah, that's Lord Chaitanya mentions that. I forget the Sanskrit, but or the Bengali. Yeah, everything in the material world. Yeah, a dry stool or wet stool, Prabhupada describes. It's all the same. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Should we, unless there's any more questions on this, or should we edge on to another verse? 10 minutes we have. So that was text 28. Now there's an amazing verse next. It's really amazing, this next verse. Someone would like to read this. Sejal Mother, you'd like to read this amazing verse?
I think Sejal just read. You could ask.
Oh, was it Sejal? Yeah, sorry. Mano Mohini Gopi Dasi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Acharya vata pasyanti kaschit enam. Acharya vata vadati tathaiva. Janya, is it Janya?
Yeah.
Acharya vachenam anya srinoti. Srutvapi inam veda na cheva kaschit. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. But since Gita Upanishad is largely based on the principle of the Upanishad, it is not surprising to also find this passage in the Katha Upanishad 1.2.7. Sarvanyapi Bahupi Yona Lapaya Srivantopi Bahavo Yamna Vidyuha Ascharya Vakta Kusalo Sya Lapta Ascharyo Sya Gnata Kusala Nosistaha. The fact that the atomic soul is within the body of genetic animal, in the body of gigantic banyan tree, and also in the microbic germs, millions and billions of which occupy only an inch of space, is certainly very amazing. Men with a poor fund of knowledge and men who are not austere cannot understand the wonders of the individual atomic spark or spirit, even though it is explained by the greatest authority of knowledge, who imparted lesson even to Brahma, the first living being in the universe. Owing to a gross material conception of things, most men in this age cannot imagine how such a small particle can become both so great and so small. So men look at the soul proper as wonderful, either by constitution or by description. Illusioned by the material energy, people are engrossed in subject matter for sense gratification, that they have very little time to understand the question of self-understanding, even though it is a fact that without this self-understanding, all activities result is ultimate defeat in the struggle for existence. Perhaps they have no idea that one must think of the soul and thus make a solution to the material miseries. Some people who are inclined to hear about the soul may be attending lectures in good association, but sometimes owing to ignorance, they are misguided by acceptance of the Supersoul and the atomic soul as one without distinction of magnitude. It is very difficult to find a man who perfectly understands the position of the Supersoul, the atomic soul, their respective function and relationship, and all other major and minor details. And it is still more difficult to find a man who has actually derived full benefit from knowledge of the soul and who is able to describe the position of the soul in different aspects. But if somehow or other one is unable to understand the subject matter of the soul, then one's life is successful. The easiest process for understanding the subject matter of self, however, is to accept the statements of the Bhagavad Gita spoken by the greatest authority, Lord Krishna, without being debated by others' theories. But it also requires a great deal of penance and sacrifice, either in this life or in the previous ones, before one is able to accept Krishna as the Supreme Person of Godhead. Krishna can, however, be known as such by the causeless mercy of the pure devotee and by no other way. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you. See, I told you it was an amazing verse.
Yes.
Well, because it's got the word amazing in this.
Yeah.
Amazing verse. But any questions about this or observations or comments? I was just thinking about the paragraph, the second paragraph, just before the end, which starts, some people who are inclined to hear about the soul. Now, there is actually the subject of the soul and the subject of the afterlife and the subject of, you know, this metaphysical kind of pseudo-spiritualist type stuff. What I'm trying to say is that there is hundreds and thousands and millions of different books and philosophies. You could say different speculations, which Prabhupada says, well, he's indicating here in a
it's the greatest authority.
Yeah. Now we're very, very fortunate because we know because all these points here, like Prabhupada says, some persons, they're attending lectures, but they're misguided, and someone who's given a lecture describes about God or describes about the Supersoul and the atomic soul as one without distinction. So this is Bhagavad, or the impersonalist theory. So then he says it's very difficult to find someone who perfectly understands the position of the Supersoul. So we know the position of the Supersoul thanks to the Bhagavad Gita, thanks to Srila Prabhupada, and it's very clear to us. We also know about the atomic soul, and that's us, through the Bhagavad Gita. And then, so that's Sambandha, and then Abhidheya, then their respective functions and relationships. What's the function of the Supersoul or Krishna, and what's the function of the atomic soul in relationship to each other? No one else can actually give a very clear answer on this. There's so much speculation. Yeah. And he says all major and minor details. So that's Krishna consciousness, gives all the major and minor details of the relationship between the atomic soul and the supreme soul. And then he speaks of prayojan here as well. And it's still more difficult to find one who's actually derived the full benefit from knowledge of the soul. So what's the full benefit of that? That's Krishna consciousness. Yeah, it's developed love for Krishna. It's very difficult to find someone who's actually, having understood and put it into practice, actually gets the benefit of that knowledge. Yeah. But he said, but if somehow or other one is able to understand, then one's life is successful. Then he explains the easiest process, and Prabhupada says, is to accept the statements of the Bhagavad Gita. That's why, we have a very clear understanding. And sometimes I watch these things of persons who have these out-of-body experiences. Like I just watched one the other day, and this was a Christian lady. I won't go into all the details of her near-death experience, but she described an out-of-body experience. She had an aneurysm in her brain, and her brain was full of blood, and the whole graphic description. And there, the usual thing, there was a tunnel or something like that. But what she described, she was describing her being out of her body. Yeah. And she didn't have to look behind her, but she said it's as if she had eyes in the back of her head, and she could sense that her body, which was just like a lump of plastic or matter, was lying there. But she was going forward to this kind of, you describe this light or something. But for her, it was all kind of like a mystery. What she's describing is something that we fully understand. There's a difference between the soul and the body. You understand what I'm saying? But for a lot of people, it's all a big mystery. It's all a big, what was really happening there. But we know it's all explained in Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, yeah. Any questions on that? We got. Oh, I just missed.
I have one question.
Yes, please, Mother.
we know about the Yamadutas and the Vishnu Dutas, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am not 100% sure what time they come. I know that they take the soul out of the body, pull it out from the body.
Yeah.
But when we hear about people having this kind of, but she had out of body experience, which means she came back
Yeah, it
into
did.
the body.
Yeah, it came because
So it wasn't death, actually. Yeah.
no, actually, God said to her that your time is not right yet. Your time is not up, and she was lamenting like anything, and she was saying to God. Of course, she didn't describe God; she just had a feeling about him, and she was telling God all the good she had done, and she didn't want to come back again. She wanted to stay there with him, but no, he said, "No, your time is up. Your time is not ready." So those experiences are there, especially when the body is in a state of shock. Yeah, and sometimes it so happens that the soul will leave the body, but their time for dying is not yet there. Their time is not up. So then they have to re-enter the body. That's I guess that's quite a common explanation, because I guess we only hear about near-death experiences from people who go near-death and then come back again, because you don't hear it from people who actually die, because, you know. So your question is, when do the Yamadutas or the Vishnu Dutas come? Well, they come when time is up. Except in very exceptional cases, if like Ajamil. Yeah, that was quite an exceptional case.
Mostly the Yamadutas will come. Yeah.
Yeah, the Yamadutas come, and there's
but then I was also thinking about the pain, which is the 10,000 scorpions stinging.
Well, that's
leaves the body.
Well, yeah, that's the actual. That's technically called the active stage of dying. The nurses or doctors know there's different stages in dying. One of them is called the active stage, and that's when your body's getting cooked up to a heat, to a fever. That's when everything is closing down. That's when the process of actively dying is actually happening, you know. And just before that, I mean, doctors know this, so just before that, they phone any relatives. Oh, you better come. Uncle Ben's not going to be here long, because he's entered into the active stage of dying. So that's what that is. That's described in Bhagavad, isn't it? Somewhere the heat of the body heats up. Yeah. So at that point, we should be enwrapped in thoughts of Krishna. Yes. So
I was just thinking, remembering recently there was a message my Guru Maharaj, this one, Japatak Maharaj was saying when he went to Hyderabad recently, and some people spoke about somebody got up from death, and he went straight. He was asked to read Bhagavad Gita. He went to the temple and got the Bhagavad Gita.
yeah, there you go. You find interesting stories. There's one story with when I can't remember the details, but you probably recognize the story as I begin to describe it. There's one disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta who had died, and he was on the funeral pyre, just about to go up in flames, and he came back to life. And he explained how he went to, I think I remember he actually went to Yama's abode. And when they heard he was a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta, then they said, "Oh, we need your blessings. You please go back." Like that. Yeah, we hear these stories.
This is very recent one. Unbelievable. Very recently, this is a recent visit, and people said to Maharaj, this happened, and Maharaj was saying, see, Yamadutas also on our case distributing Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. So we're very, very, very fortunate actually that we got the whole science of the soul and the body and death and the whole detailed science of God and the relationship with God. It's all explained. Everything's explained there for us, thanks to Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, we've no need to be in ignorance about it. We very clearly know. What is death? You know, what is birth? What is the subtle body? What is God? You know, what's our relationship with God? What's our purpose here? Etc. Anyway, all right, let's pause there, shall we, for part 1 of Bhagavad Gita this week. And tomorrow we have part 2, continuing on Atma Tattva, looking, another 2 verses on this subject. Then Krishna's going to speak about, going to speak on a different subject now. He's going to speak a different subject. He's going to speak to the Kshatriya in Arjuna and inspire him to fight, being a warrior. You know, that will come next. Okay, thank you, everyone. I hope this reading was of some interest and you found it interesting. Hope it was okay to read that little part from the Mahabharata. Just remember that there's some rich people can't digest anything, but poor people can digest wood chips. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare
Hare
Krishna. Thank you so much.
Bhagavad Gita